Welcome back to our continuing look at the story of Jesus as told by Jesus' apostle Matthew. Matthew, the tax collector, also known as Levi. Levi, quite possibly, was his more Jewish name. Who knows for sure? Matthew chapter 26, and we will be reading verses 10 to 13. I will be reading out of the American Standard Version, the American Standard Version. Matthew chapter 26, verses 10 to 13. But Jesus perceiving it said unto them, Why trouble ye this woman? For she hath wrought a good work upon me. For ye have the poor always with you, but ye have not all, but me you have not always. For in that she poured out this anointment upon my body, and she did it to prepare me for burial. Verily I say unto you, wheresoever the gospel shall be preached in this whole world, that also which this woman hath done shall be spoken of for a memorial of her. Now, I don't know how much you're into archaeology. I have a little bit of a fascination for archaeology. It's not a big fascination, but a bit of interest. And I would say to you, point blank, archaeologists are indebted to one major factor, and that is the way we bury the dead and treat the dead is of interest and always of interest. And that is important for archaeology because it's not just we deal with the dead, it's how we deal with the dead. The way in which people are buried and with what they are buried are shaped by cultural values and beliefs. What are we saying? King Tut's tomb, that was a big one more than 100 years ago. Why? Because of what he was buried with. You go back into other parts of the world, they are not only just digging up a burial site, but they will, especially if the person was wealthy or maybe a political leader, often finding artifacts buried with that person. Go back to other places. We can always find stuff there. The way in which people deal with the dead is never routine. And the other thing is to understand that the way that we deal with the dead does not remain the same. The Jews in the first century had kind of a unique practice, unique for them, that was not practiced historically and would not be practiced moving forward. There was this window of time where they had a unique form of burial in the first century. And what they did is they took the dead person and put that person in a tomb. They would allow that person to sit in the tomb for a while, several months maybe, and then they would come back after the flesh is gone from the body and repackage those bones in a container called an ossuary. So when you look at the practice of burial, a person was not buried like in my culture, one plot, one body, but a tomb was a place to hold many people, many bodies. And point of fact, we could say a tomb was often a family burial site. So if we are to understand the anointing of Jesus, we have to put it in the context of a rather unique burial practice. Why would you anoint a body if you're going to put it in a tomb? Well, long story short, it seems that there was a very practical reason. Rotting flesh is not very pleasant. If you pack the body very heavily with spices, it would provide a way in which people could enter into the tomb. You see, when a body was placed in a tomb, the body was packed with spices. The tomb would not be used once, but would be available for the next person who dies. And who would know when that would be? It is probable that the spices, in that sense, had a very practical purpose, which she brought. It would help to deal with the odor of the decaying body. When this lady used this expensive perfume on the body, she was anticipating what would happen later this week. Obedience is a key part of the life of faith. Look at what this woman did. Did she know that in a few days Jesus would be dead? Did she have some special insight as to where things were going? The woman did not have insider information on what was going to happen. What she had was an open mind and an obedient faith. You see, she would not have seen the need for what she did. She was not there because Jesus was going to be killed on Friday. The perfume, after all, could have been sold and given to the poor, the proceeds of that sale given to the poor. What she did was follow the Spirit of God and left the results to Him. The life of faith is not always about doing what seems obvious. We do what we are called to do in anticipation of how God will take and use that event. There are times when it makes no sense at all, but by faith, we know it is the right thing to do. There is a danger in the church that we become unduly pragmatic. We only do as it makes sense. In a day and age where we have become rigid in our use of time and measured in our responses, this woman calls us to live out a life of spontaneous grace. This is not to say that we do things with no rhyme or reason. It is to say that we must have the ability to not get locked into our systems, our programs, our approaches, our daytimers, whatever. This was the problem with the Pharisees and their approach to faith. They ultimately had a faith system that was rigid, inflexible. You see, we can put our faith into our systems and in our way of doing things. When God calls us to go anoint a man on death row, we go, I have no time, and that makes no sense at all. Grace is grace when it knows no boundaries and has no limits.